First sip of the day. Yes. Yes. That is what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Nice. Should not. Hmm. Hmm. You know, this book right now, it's talking about how, or it has talked about, it's referring to that again. It's talking about, or it's talked about how when you make public commitments, then you're a lot more likely to pull through with them. And the funny thing about that was that I always noticed, when I tell someone about where I'm going towards, what I'm doing right now. Let's say I'm losing weight. Let's take a different goal. I want to learn something, right? And then I tell people like, yo, I'm going to learn this thing. I'm going to do this, and that. I was a lot less likely to do the thing. I think on the other hand, if you like, I noticed, for example, with the whole with all of this, like making the videos, right? I've been wanting to make videos for some time, and then I decided to start it just in silent. I just did it on my own. But then I noticed that when I make like when there are, that's also something they mentioned, when there are social stakes. So, for example, I like say I'm a certain way in these videos or in the streams, right? And every time I say that, I kind of also just immediately reaffirm it in like by giving myself proof in the videos here, like reading, for example, right? I said I read every day, um, and I try to read every day, right? But now I think it's a lot more likely that I'm actually going to read every day, which can be proven by me literally like streaming it right now. I mean, doing it right now. I usually don't read like this in the mornings, but it's hella vibes. So I can definitely do that more. But it's like that, making that public commitment when there's like maybe it's like a social status thing, when an aspect of yourself, right, is like more on the line. I didn't quite get what it was. I know that it also has to do with your propensity to stick with your word or your pride for your word. Um, right? Because if I say I'm going to do this thing, then I'm going to do it, right? But I think earlier me would also just be a lot less likely to do the thing if you would have just said it. That's the thing, right? It's about just saying it. You can make the, I don't know if saying it is really making a public commitment, just saying like, yo, I'm going to do this thing. I don't know if that counts as a public commitment. Doesn't sound very committed. It does sound kind of committed. It is like a commitment. And I was passionate about some stuff. Like for some time, I was like, yo, I'm going to get into data analytics. And I went to my second brother, the one I mentioned in both of those videos. And I was like, yo, I'm going to like do data analytics and stuff. And he just kind of looked at me. And I was like, okay. Because like he low-key knew I wasn't going to do data analytics. Yeah. But that was me back then. I think nowadays I wouldn't say I'm getting into data analytics. I think there's value in making commitments to things maybe you're already in part doing. Something like that. Right? Where you're already proving to yourself that you can follow through or that you want to follow through with that commitment. It's interesting. I'm thinking back, I think, me wanting to do data analytics was for sure on the one part, me wanting to have a skill with like value, but it was also one of those moments where early on already, I actually wanted to like build real skills. But yeah, I didn't know how. Because I thought it started with guitar, right? Where the like real need, want became apparent, but no, I think it started a lot earlier. Nice. Hmm. Hmm. This is crazy. They're talking about how commitments can be formed on Mm, you're talking about how commitments can be the chance to commit to something, a large decision over a longer term, for example, can be increased massively when an initial commitment is incited, even if that first condition is then later removed. Example, they take the example of a car dealership, and they're like, because he would go and he would like make these case studies, right? He would observe car dealers or like salespeople, generally salespeople, but here he's doing it for car dealers. Someone walks in, they look at a car, right? And what they'll do is they'll give them a low ball offer, like a slightly, like a, they're like, you'll get this car for $400 off. Person enters the car, right? And now they're looking at it and they already feel like really excited about this car, right? And they're starting to make like personal commitments. Even if they wouldn't have bought the car, they're starting to make personal, like, for the original price, they're starting to make these commitments now. And then they start building certain psychological structures around this car. So, they are the kind of person to drive this car. They then have, like an enhanced self-esteem. What does it say here, right? A new self-image. They have, um, yeah, like a new car. They have a new car. It's actually, yeah, it's part of their identity then, right? And then if you take away that low price, which was part of the original deal, that idea or that commitment still stands on those other legs that came with time, right? So as you can still throw, like, as you can take away those 400 that $400 reduction, saying I made some kind of mistake, the commitment still stands. Here they're making another example. It was a study. A company went to people and they were like, "Yo, um, could you like we're gonna inform like you guys you're using an abnormal amount of gas. Here are ways to warm your building. Here are ways you can not do that. Would you do that?" Right? And then they make the commitment. They're like, "Yeah." They come back after some time. They observe, the gas saving commitments they've made, and no one did anything or nothing substantial, right? Barely. Then they offer them to be publicly named in an article for saving gas, right? Suddenly, the number of people that do it like is increased like massively. I think what did they say here? It's like there's like 70% of them agreed to do it or something. Oh, okay, those people. Where does it say the amount of people? The homeowners in this sample had saved an average of 422 cubic feet of natural gas apiece. The chance to have their names in the paper had motivated these residents to substantial conservation efforts for a period of a month. Then here, in terms of percentage of energy savings, they had managed a 12.2% gas savings during the first month because they expected to see themselves lauded in the paper. When the offer then was removed, that number, like the offer, they at some point the researchers come back or this institute come back and they say, yo, actually, we can't put you in the paper. My bad. Right. And then the people's energy savings increase to 15.5%. And that's another one of those examples, right, where you take away, and then this is so interesting because they built this up so perfectly, because in a different chapter they talk about something else, which is how when you make commitments, if you make commitments and there's very low social stakes to them, public commitments, then it really must mean no, and there's very little reward to them. You make a commitment, there's very little reward to them, public reward. Then it really must mean that you believe in them, right? More so, right? People seeing that will believe it more, but also you'll believe it more. And so when you take away that publicity from people, he doesn't say that here, I think, like explicitly like that, but I think that's also kind of what he's assuming one will assume. When you take away that public reward from people and they've already made that commitment, then it really means to them that they are the ones standing up for saving fuel. And so their identity becomes way more attached to it because they're not relying it on publicity anymore, like public reward. But now it's like an intrinsic motivation. Hmm. Okay. Defense, right? As a defense to that method. The only effective defense I know against the weapons of influence embodied in the combined principles of commitment and consistency is an awareness that, although consistency is generally good, even vital, there's a foolish, rigid variety to be shunned. We must be wary of the tendency to automatically and unthinkingly to be automatically and unthinkingly consistent, for it lays us open to the maneuvers of those who want to exploit the mechanical commitment consistency sequence for profit. Since automatic consistency is so useful in allowing us an economical and appropriate way of behaving most of the time, however, we can't decide merely to eliminate it from our lives altogether. The results would be disastrous. If, rather than whirring along in accordance with our prior decisions and deeds, we stop to think through the merits of each new action before performing it, we would never have time to accomplish anything significant. We need even that dangerous, mechanical brand of consistency. The only way out of the dilemma is to know when consistency is likely to lead to a poor choice. There are certain signals, two separate kinds of signals, to tip us off. We register each type in a different part of our bodies. Okay. I mean, yeah, but like, okay. Stomach signs. The first signal is easy to recognize. It occurs right in the pit of our stomachs when we realize we are trapped into complying with a request we know we didn't want to perform. It has happened to me 100 times. An especially memorable instance, though, took place on a summer evening, well before I began to study compliance tactics. Okay, he's getting into the story now. I'm not going to read that out loud. Damn. He's explaining how that feeling in your stomach appears. A woman knocks at his door, and she's like very attractive, right? He wants to impress her. She sits down with him and talks with. He also flirts with her, but it's like it's failing because that's not what she's there for. She sits down and talks with him about, what sort of entertainment he likes. Do you like going to movies? Do you like watching ballet? Do you like going to concerts? Right, and to all of these things, he agrees because he wants to impress the person. And he's saying that he does these things, right? He's associating himself with that. Then by the end, she's like, "Ah, it's sick. Well, if you signed up for this for Club America, you'd be saving 1,200 a year by joining, which would save you, all of these like that. There's just an upside for all of these interests that you follow, that you said that you follow, right? And because he had now made that commitment, he felt extremely pressured, especially because he just openly made that commitment to her to take, and there's no apparent downside. What I find interesting about that, because he does sign it here, is that he says no more though. I listen to my stomach these days, but I noticed what's really important is to take time for your decisions. Is to really take time for your decisions. I've learned that, or I'm still learning that, but to say, in a moment like that, you feel something in your stomach, right? To me, this is like, then I'm just so much more likely to take a second now than I used to be. And I think there's like a certain tolerance one has to like have for yourself and for the world to take time. Yeah, like an acceptance, you know, or a confidence as well. To just take a second, think about it. Not even a second, right? You can also just say, I'm just going to decide at a different point. The problem there, what I find disturbing, is that really a lot of sales tactics, I believe, are about reducing that time as much as possible. So convincing someone as much as possible means putting them under pressure so that they can't make a decision with time, a thought through decision. And that's scary, right? Because, yeah, I mean, I guess you just have to have more confidence kind of in that moment. Hmm. Oh, okay. He mirrors the tactic to them. He tells them what they're doing. Okay, he didn't cook, but I get the point. I think pointing it out is actually not a bad idea. Maybe not as exaggerated as he did it. I okay. So his first suggestion against that compliance tactic is listening to your gut, right? And then noticing that feeling and then pointing out the tactic that is being used. When someone builds up a commitment within you and then urges you to follow through with it. It's great if it's like, yo, I want to work out, or someone's like, yo, you're focused on your health, right? And you're like, yeah, and then they're like, well, and work out, and then it's like, yeah, sweet, right? But in that moment, they're doing something more so to your detriment because they had also built up a false identity within you. Here, he's describing that there are other moments where you make an emotional commitment. Let's take sports as an example, right? Let's say you actually just genuinely do not have the time to do sports. Crazy, because you should anyway, in my opinion. But let's say you're literally or your family would suffer if you did sports because you need to make more money. I don't know. Somebody convinces you to do sports. You're pretty locked in on doing sports, right? You enjoy doing sports, but somewhere along the lines, it's also coming to a detriment to you. When you look back at the situation and what's happening, he's saying there is, he calls it the heart of hearts, certain decision that you make, an emotional one. Or there's a feeling that precedes the decision to do whatever it is you comply to do, let's say doing sports. And there is a shift, a discrepancy, a small one, between the feeling and your rationalization of that feeling. And he's saying if you are more attuned to noticing that prior feeling, then and you hone in on it, and then you follow through with that feeling, then you're more likely to reflect against such compliance tactics. Meaning, right? I'm looking at this commitment of doing sports. Talking with this person, they're like, yeah, you should do sports. I'm like, yes. They're like, yeah, okay, we're gonna see each other at the gym. I'm like, all right, I'm already in it. I'm down, right? And then calls me up next day. We're going to the gym, right? And in this moment, preceding the decision to say yes, there should be an emotion that says, actually, no. And then quickly it'll be rationalized, like very quickly, right? So it'll be like, actually, no, but it's good for my health. I need to do this, blah, blah, blah. But actually, you don't want to do the thing. And honing in on that emotion, seeing that emotion, and then you have to pull through, right? You have to follow through with that emotion. The heart of hearts. Yeah, I guess yeah, I think that's something meditation can help with. I think that's something meditation can help with for sure. That's good, right? I think it promotes, yeah, I like that. I think it promotes like being more aware of how we feel. Because I do think, I think we totally get convinced like that all the time. Damn. All right. I think I'm gonna finish this chapter. And it's gonna be 11 o'clock, and then I need to log in on uni, but I might as well stream that as well. The wash machine was going ham, and there was stuff on it rattling, and I do not trust that. There was also oil on there, like a bottle. If that fell on the floor, nah, that fell on the floor, my brother. Proclivity. I can't read that. What's that in English? The way letters, words are spoken. There's like that, a tendency to choose or do something regularly. An inclination or predisposition towards a particular thing. I like that, highlighting that. Okay. So here toward the end, he's saying other people who are more likely to be trapped by this compliance technique, right? Of making an initial commitment and then sticking to it like steadfastly or even a bit foolishly, like sticking to it ex- too extremely. He says, yes, there are people who are older, right? They tend to have a higher commitment to their words. So commitment to words, I think like in that case, they're kind of saying very committed people, are very consistent people, people who put a lot to their word, and older people are more likely to put a lot to their word, and individualistic people. So people from like Western societies, westernized societies, because they base their decisions less on what their peers do and more on what their history has to say. And those people are more likely to be fooled or to act foolishly due to complying to something. I think it makes sense, right? People who put a lot of focus on their word, if you get them to make that word initially, more likely to just stick with it. Yeah. Okay. It's so interesting, right? I mean, I think it's good enough that one reads this and then they're primed by it to notice these things in their surroundings. But even to consistency, there's a drawback. You know what I mean? Where I'm like, I'm practicing consistency. I want to become more consistent, all of that. But with that comes these, higher likelihoods for this kind of thing. And it's true. I think it's totally true. I'm putting more focus on my word now than I ever have, I think. Where I'm saying, my word is really valuable to me. If I do something, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do that thing. But that also means if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do that thing, right? More so than ever. Guess you also have to stay critical of your own word, right? Yeah, it's like you got to reflect the whys. Why am I doing this thing? Or why do I continue to do this thing? And there's a foolishness to it, and being aware of that. It's not bad, it doesn't sound easy. It doesn't have to be easy. I'm gonna read the summary. Summary. Psychologists have long recognized a desire in most people to be and look consistent within their words, beliefs, attitudes, and deeds. This tendency for consistency is fed from three sources. First, let me highlight that. First, good personal consistency is highly valued by society. Second, aside from its effect on public image, generally, consistent conduct provides a beneficial approach to daily life. Third, a consistent orientation affords a valuable shortcut through the complexity of modern existence. By being consistent with earlier decisions, one reduces the need to process all the relevant information in future similar situations. Instead, one merely needs to recall the earlier decision and to respond consistently with it. Within the realm of compliance, securing an initial commitment is the key. After making a commitment, that is, taking a stand or position, people are more willing to agree to requests that are in keeping with their prior commitment. Thus, many compliance professionals try to induce people to take an initial position that is consistent with the behavior they will later request from these people. Not all commitments are equally effective, however, in producing consistent future action. Commitments are most effective when they are active, public, effortful, and viewed as internally motivated, uncoerced. Commitments are most effective when they are active, public, effortful, and viewed as internally motivated. Viewed as internally motivated, right? I like that. I read every day, right? Active, I read. Public, I said it in the video. Effortful is like some kind of effort, right? I'm going to read every day. And viewed as internally motivated. I wanted to do that for myself, right? Okay. Let's think about that though when we looked at data analysis. Commitments are most effective when they're active, public, effortful, and viewed as internally motivated. I was like, I want to do data, I want to get into data analysis. Active, I want to read every day data now. Yeah, I mean, I want to read every day is more active. I feel like it's closer to the action, right? Reading every day, learning data analysis is more obscure. Public, I made that commitment to one person. I made this in a video. Effortful, both of them are effortful. And internally motivated. It was internally motivating, but the motivation wasn't clear. Not as clear as this. Why do I want to learn data analysis? I think I had reasons, but they definitely weren't convincing reasons. Commitment decisions, even erroneous ones, have a tendency to be self-perpetuating because they can grow their own legs. That is, people often add new reasons and justifications to support the wisdom of commitments they have already made. As a consequence, some commitments remain in effect long after the conditions that spurred them have changed. This phenomenon explains the effectiveness of certain deceptive compliance practices, such as throwing the low ball. To recognize and resist the undue influence of consistency pressures on our compliance decisions, we should listen for signals coming from two places within us: our stomachs and our heart of hearts. Stomach signs appear when we realize that we are being pushed by commitment and consistency pressures to agree to requests we know we don't want to perform. Under these circumstances, it is best to explain to the requester that such compliance would constitute a brand of foolish consistency in which we prefer not to engage. Heart of heart signs are different. They are best employed when it is not clear to us that an initial commitment was wrong-headed. Here, we should ask ourselves a crucial question. Knowing what I know, if I could go back in time, would I make the same commitment? One informative answer may come as the first flash of feeling registered. Commitment and consistency tactics are likely to work especially well on members of individualistic societies, particularly those who are over 50 years old. If I could go back in time, if knowing what I know now, if I could go back in time, would I make the same commitment? One informative answer may come as the first flash of feeling registered. Yeah. Commitment and consistency tactics are likely to work especially well on members of individualistic societies, particularly those who are over 50 years old. Study questions, content mastery. Why do we want to look and be consistent in most situations? Right? Has a use to society. It's useful for ourselves. And that's like both reasons, right? Look and be. Look, right? I mean, and be consistent. Yeah, because in society, that's, I think, it increases our propensity or our likelihood to like survive in a society functionally. Why do we find even rigid, stubborn consistency desirable in many situations? Because it makes life easier with an overload of information and decisions we have to make. Being able to rely stubbornly on our consistency simplifies that decision making process, taking load off of our minds and letting us act faster with less stress. Yeah. Which four factors cause a commitment to affect a person's self image and consequent future action? Cause a commitment to affect a person's self image and consequent future actions. Ah, effortful, active, effortful, active, internally motivated, see, seemingly internally motivated, effortful, active, seemingly internally motivated. Was it active? It is active. I'm reading. Is it effortful? Yeah, I like it. Yeah. It's internally motivated. And then there was one more. What was it, like desirable? Public. Public. I was thinking of that, right? I was thinking of that. Okay, active, public, effortful, and viewed as internally motivated. What makes written commitments so effective? They're undeniable, right? They explain that they're undeniable. You look at them, and there's also, I think, like there's no ambiguity you can read. You can't read someone's like body language in it. It's just an undeniable statement. What is the relationship between the compliance tactics of lowballing and the term growing its own legs? So lowballing creates these initial low stakes for a commitment, and afterwards one builds psychological structures to uphold that commitment for oneself. As the first structure falls, the other legs still hold the structure up. All right, I'm going to do the critical thinking sections in my brain because that's faster, and I want to get done with this because I have stuff to do. Public, effortful, self-motivated, public, effortful, self-motivated, viewed as self-motivated, and active. This one's cool. Imagine that you're having trouble motivating yourself to study for an important exam that is less than a week away. Drawing upon your knowledge of the commitment process, describe what you would do to get yourself to put in the necessary study time. Be sure to explain why your chosen actions ought to work. And this one's cool, right? So what I would do is, first off, I'd prime myself a bunch, right? I'd have like the time on a calendar. I'd have like shit around me saying that this exam's coming up. Let's look at the four things, right? I would make a realistic public commitment. I'd say I'd like go out and maybe make a post or something saying I'm going to study for at least 3 hours every day for this subject. Because, right, because adding a because strengthens the reason for yourself and also for others. Because I want a good grade. Right, that works. And then I would start small. So I would just do like 5 minutes of work. And then I would say, no, I'm going to do the 3 hours. Again, it's effortful, it's public. It is effortful, public, self-motivated, um, not actionable, but active. Not. actually don't know. Great. That's the chapter done. Happy about that. Good stuff. I want to share this thing that I made. Here's the camera. This thing that I made. Check that out. Isn't that pretty? It took an inordinate amount of time. Not because the process is difficult. All these things were already CNC cut. And there were like a few different colors and stuff. But it smells like my backpack. Not because they were already cut. But because I just take so long to make certain decisions, especially design decisions, especially when I'm going to be using it for like a really long time or whatever. I took forever. It's like such an inconsequential thing. It ripped like a bunch of time from my day. Something like that shouldn't. Or I would like if stuff like that didn't happen like that. But then again, it was very effortful. It was public. It was active, and it was a self motivated act, and so I really really like it. I'd actually kept this empty because I wanted to maximize my chances to edit it in the future, and so I'd actually taken a bunch of different colored pins with me. I threw them away, right? And I actually really like this. I feel like in a weird way it does represent me quite well for like the decision process and everything that was behind it. I quite like it. And now it's my coffee cup holder. Isn't that sick? Low key, it's so sick. It's definitely a product idea. I love this thing. I'd put like cork here, though. Makes nice sounds. That's a pretty thing. Oh yeah. Well then, I'm gonna lock in on uni now, and it's actually business stuff. It's actually business stuff, so I could live stream it. Writing down my, because like I'm in like a business course. It's called Business Canvas, and it's about incepting a business at my uni. Like they do that. Thought that was pretty sick. TU Berlin leaked that, but that's fine. People can know. They would know anyway because you could just Google Business Canvas. And we're at the inception of it, right? And there's this general product idea I've had. Happy to share it, as I said I would. The commitment that I made. It's a table riser. Riser. It raises the table. And it's like usually when you have tables, and let's say my problem was that I wanted a standing desk, right? And I looked around, how could I modulate my desk and stuff, but it was all super effortful. All of those things I would need to get a new table, or I'd need to get new legs entirely, and then like not even screw them in, but like drill them into my table. Why are there not any more intuitive solutions? I don't know yet, but I thought, what if there was a device that I could place my table on that device itself could extend. And let's say it was like, applicable for most desks. It doesn't have to be all of them, but most of them, most shapes. Because even this here, right, I can't, with this desk, which isn't a proper desk setup because it's just standing on boxes, but you wouldn't have to know. There's like some kind of specific mechanism that you like click the leg into and screw it in and stuff like that. Hell no, right? Where are the more intuitive solutions to that? And that's what I want to create, bring into the world, right? And I think that Business Canvas is a great opportunity for that. That's also why I'm so into mechatronics, product design, stuff like that. I want to be able to build that and other things, but also that. So do I end the stream now and make a different stream where I'm locking in? Because this one, I'm treating them more like videos, right? This one was about me reading. Damn, the washing machine. It's 11:10. Good. I'm gonna do the wash. I'm actually gonna let it spin one more time and start with the business stuff. Yeah, I'm gonna make that a separate stream. It was nice. I enjoyed this. I like that actually. I think I'm gonna do this a bit more. It was also good to work this through like multiple times over and over again. It's pretty good. It's like great way to reflect on what I'm reading and maybe disseminate that knowledge because it's important stuff, man. That's important stuff. Great. Then see you like in a bit. I'm gonna make myself another coffee because I want to also go poop soon so that I can weigh myself, as I often have, and I often will again. Yeah, in a bit.